Hi there, I'm really excited about today's video. It is especially for the grade 6s at Benjamin Pine Primary School. What we're going to be doing today is this beautiful peacock. It's done in monochromatic colors, so you would know from last term, monochromatic means we're just using one color, but we can add black and white or even different colors to it to make different shades of the color or tones. You can see from this picture we're using blues and we're adding in some yellows and greens into the blue to make it a bit more interesting. In a monochromatic picture you can also use black, so we're using black on the beak and we're going to add some texture onto the peacock's body using black. Now for today's lesson you're going to need a piece of paper, a pencil and your pencil crayons. If you don't have pencil crayons, roll-ups will also work just fine. Let's get started. We're going to start by drawing our peacock in pencil. You need to press really lightly for this because we don't want to see any big fat ugly pencil lines at the end of this picture. I'm going to use a black Koki just so that you can see what I'm drawing nice and clearly. Right, to start our peacock we are going to draw a big oval shape for where his tail needs to be. So round about just above the middle of your page, draw a big oval like this. Then we're going to draw his body. This is also an oval shape that's going to overlap with the first oval that we've drawn. So it starts at the top of his tail. Let the oval come out like this. Okay, I'm going to just stop there, but you could draw the whole oval the whole way around. So you could draw it like that. But we just need this section here for his body. Next, we're going to do his head. Now, don't go right to the top of your page to draw the head because we need to add the crest in over here. So come down a little bit from the top of your page, about 4 centimeters or so. And it's an S shape. So start here, curve around, and the S stops as it gets to the body. Then we're going to draw the bottom part of the S shape. And that can go down the front of the body a little bit. Okay, so his head it's curving like an S. Then we're going to add his beak in and the crest. Just draw 4 curved lines coming off the top of his head and then just a squiggly kind of a rectangle. And then we're going to add his eye in. Just a simple pupil on the inside. Now the next step is to add this curve to the tail. So you can see here the rectangle that we've drawn goes straight like that. But what we want to do is copy the S shape, repeat the S shape that we had in the head. So we're going to start where the tail and the body join and create an S shape until we get to the bottom of the body. Our S shape is from where the tail and the body join at the top to where they join at the bottom. So you make the S curve around. You might need to try it a few times. So this line over here will need to be erased, and then any errors that you make, and this line here will also need to be erased. What I'm going to do now is switch to my pencil drawing so that I can color in nicely and not get distracted by all of these lines. We'll leave it on this picture for a few minutes to give everybody a chance to catch up. You can pause the video if you need extra time. By now, everybody should have their peacock drawn and we're ready to color it in. So we're going to start with a nice dark blue for his crest and his head. I'm going to start with the crest, and in this we're just going to scribble. He's got lots of tiny little feathers on his crest, so to give people the idea that that's what's there, we're just doing a little bit of scribbling. What we're going to do is take our black pencil crayon now, and on the bottom part of his crest, on this right hand side and along the bottom, we're just going to add a little scribble of black in. That's just to give it a different tone and give it a bit more depth. We can also use our black pencil crayon to draw the bases of the feathers that go up to the crest. And you can outline the eye and shade in his beak. Again, the beak can be a bit darker along the bottom, and then color lightly as you get to the top. We're going to make his head and his neck that same dark blue that you used on the crest. And again, along the bottom, shade in a little bit darker, and then get lighter as you get to the top. Now I can see here that the pattern from my desk is coming through with my colouring in. All that I'm going to do is get some paper and press on that. If you have a book in your desk, you can also use that. Having a couple of pieces of paper underneath stops the marks from the desk coming through. So now I can shade over it and have some nice smooth shading there. So if you're finding as you're colouring in that the marks from your desk are coming through, you need to just put a book underneath your picture. Okay, and the shading is lighter at the top. So to do darker shading, you just press hard, draw your lines close together. Then as you want them to get lighter, you just press lighter and lighter. Down the inside of his neck will also be quite dark. And it will get lighter as it goes towards the outside of the neck. Then as we get to the bottom of the neck, it's all going to be quite dark shaded. Once you've coloured in the head and the neck, now blue, we're going to again take a little bit of black and just lightly add some black shading along the bottom where we did our dark shading earlier. You don't want to press too hard with the black. We're just adding a little bit of dark shading. When you do a monochromatic picture, you need to add blacks and whites to the picture to make different tones. Right, now that we've done that, we're going to move on to the peacock's body. Now on his body, he's got a fish scale pattern. If you think about the fish's scales, or if you were drawing a quick picture of a fish, you would probably add this shape onto its body. So it's the pattern that makes us think of a fish. But we're going to color it in with long lines to create a texture that makes people think of feathers, because the peacock has feathers on its body. So what we're going to start by doing is drawing those fish scales. Just imagine you're drawing a fish. So start with one fish scale, there's a U. Then in the next line, maybe try and get 3 scales in. Then in the next one, try and do a few more, maybe 4 or 5. Try and keep them the same size. Now that we've drawn them, we're going to shade them in with the hatching. So hatching is just lines. They're going to be shorter at the top of the scale, and as we go down, make them fatter and then shorter again. So at the top, they're nice and short, make them fatter lines and then shorter again. Just keep going along. So this texture will make people think of these fine little feathers. Once you've added your feathers in, again we're going to do a little bit of dark shading along the bottom of the body. So I'm just taking my black pencil crayon and drawing lightly along the bottom, and then around the top we're also just going to do 1 or 2 lines. Making it slightly darker around the edges makes it look a little bit more 3-dimensional. So just adding a little bit of dark shading around the edges. But make sure that there's more dark shading along the bottom than there is at the top. And finally we're going to move on to the tail. Now for the tail, we've used patterns that we see on a peacock. Circles, there's a little heart shape, there's lots of twirling lines and teardrop shapes. But we haven't done it like a regular peacock's tail. So a regular peacock's tail, it's a regular pattern and it's symmetrical. It all matches perfectly. What we're doing for this picture is called an irregular pattern. Now, a pattern just means repetition, so you're repeating the same thing again and again and again. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a perfect line or along a perfect circle. You can also have something like this, which is an irregular pattern. You're just repeating it all over the place and it's different sizes and maybe slightly different shapes, but it's repeating the same thing again and again. So the focal point of the peacock's tail, or the thing that stands out the most, is this big teardrop shape. So we're going to start with that. We're going to draw it with our light blue pencil crayon. You're going to start from the top of the tail, draw a big curve coming down about halfway down the tail, and then it's going to come back up. This is sometimes called a paisley pattern, but it kind of looks like a teardrop or a water droplet. And then inside this, we're going to repeat the pattern again. So repeat this same teardrop shape again. And like we've done before, we're going to do dark shading around the edge of this shape, and then make it lighter and lighter as we get to the middle teardrop. So we're sticking to our blues because we want to make this a monochromatic picture. But you can add other colors to the blue to make different shades of it. Especially if you only have, say, 12 pencil crayons in your set, you probably only have a light blue and a dark blue. If you have a big set of pencil crayons, maybe you have a couple of different types of blue that you can use on this picture. But if you don't, you can add other colors into the blue to make different shades and tones of blue. Okay, so I'm just going around this shape, shading it in. A good tip for coloring in a picture is to turn the picture around so that your hand is comfortable. So you can see here I've got my picture upside down, but it's much easier for me to color in this curve nicely and shade well if my hand is comfortable. So I would just turn my picture upside down or to the side and make sure that my hand is comfortable so that I color in well. Okay, light shading all the way till the center. I hope you're all keeping up and doing this with me, not just staring at the computer screen. Okay, and then I'm going to just go over the outline of this teardrop again and do some light coloring inside it. Now you can see here I've added some green to my blue because we get lots of greeny blues. So I'm just going to color lightly over the blue that I've already colored in to make a slightly different tone of blue. When you are coloring in with pencil crayons, you should do lots of layers of color. So rather than pressing really hard, do lots of layers of pressing lightly. You might also find you want to go over it with the blue again. So mine's coming out very green. What I'm going to do is add a little bit more blue when I'm done with this. Right, so I'm going to go with my blue again. This is another trick for using pencil crayons, is keep doing lots and lots of light layers of color until you get the color that you're looking for. Okay, I'm going to add some green into the center now. And now that we've colored this in, we're going to use our dark blue again. I'm just going to do some really thin lines outlining it. I'm hardly pressing on the page. And I'm not drawing one solid line, I'm drawing lots of little lines that are light and thin. When you're drawing, it's a good idea to use odd numbers. So you can either do 3 circles here, 5 circles, or 7 circles, but the odd numbers will always look better than even numbers. So I'm just using my dark blue, adding 5 circles along the bottom. Doesn't matter if it's a little bit messy and there's lots of little lines all over the place, because a peacock's tail is full of these long, thin little feathers. So when we draw like that, it makes people think of a peacock's tail. Right, the next thing that we're going to do is this irregular pattern from a peacock's tail. The eye, it's sometimes called the eye of the tail. And it starts with a little heart in the middle of it. So again, remember our odd numbers rule. So either do 3 or 5 or 7 and try and make them different sizes. If they're all the same size, it also won't look as good. So I'm going to do 1 at the bottom here. I'm just drawing my heart with my dark blue pencil crayon. I'm going to do a little one over here. maybe a bigger one here that's upside down. So that's another tip for doing an irregular pattern. Don't make them all the right way up. Draw some on their sides, some the right way up, some upside down. I find usually 5 work well on this peacock's tail. They'll fit in nicely. Okay, then around these hearts we're going to draw an oval with our light blue pencil crayon. I'm drawing a dark outline and just some light colouring on the inside. And then we're going to draw another oval around that. For that second oval, we're going to use a mixture of green and yellow. And we kind of, if you picture an egg when you're drawing that, it will help you draw it. So if you imagine that this little blue circle that we've drawn was the yolk, now we are drawing the whites of it with green. And again, I'm just doing some light colouring on the inside. Okay, we're going to add a little bit of yellow to that. So I'm just colouring over it lightly with my yellow. And then finally, I'm going over it lightly with my light blue. Now that we have these in place, we're going to draw some of these nice long lines that represent the peacock's tail and those skinny feathers on the tail. So start at the top of the tail here. Don't worry if you go over something that you've already drawn. It will add to the picture, and draw a nice curl at the end of the line. Try and make these lines different lengths, but they should all head down. Then I'm going to use my light blue and add a few light blue lines into that. It also doesn't matter if a couple of these lines go over that big teardrop shape that we did in the beginning. And then because we've used some yellow and green in the tail, it would also be a good idea to add in a few lines of the blue and the green to tie it all together. I'm not doing big twirls on the end of my green lines. I'm just drawing lines coming straight down. If your tail is looking a little bit scraggly, you just need to keep adding lines. Your other option is to get some of the lead from your pencil shavings. So I'm just putting a couple of pieces from the pencil shadings onto the page, just rubbing it around, and it will just change the color of the background in that area and tie the tail together. So if you kind of just shade where you drew your oval earlier, it will help to pull the picture together. Right, what you can do now is just pause the video on the picture of the peacock and let everybody catch up and finish. If you enjoyed drawing this peacock today, why not try out one of my other videos on how to paint the peacock using your watercolor paints.